So Ian, um, are you going to run on the Green New Deal like Jill Stein did in 2012 and 2016?
Well, I mean, I think so. I mean, the answer to your question is yes. I mean, the Green New Deal is really, really important. I have, worked with Jill for a little while. I think her constantly touting and talking about the Green New Deal was really important. I think it inspired folks that think about those, days back of FDR's time, where he talked about this New Deal and had this program introduced that really lifted millions out of poverty. Um, and I've also talked to Howie Hawkins about it as well. He calls us, he's the Green New Dealer, as he likes to say. A fantastic amount of history there. Really interesting program that he pitched. I think it was like 15 years ago. So, I mean, I think it's something that the Green Party has to keep front and center. And I do think we have to keep reminding folks that I'm really into giving credit where credit is due. That's why I take the time to mention other people, like Howie, because it not just as a Green, but as someone who's a
Ian,
lover of history. Go ahead.
you hold on one moment. Are you there?
Yeah.
Sorry, our internet broke up. Can you just repeat for the last couple of minutes that you were speaking, what you were saying?
Oh, sure. I was just saying that, did you get what I said about Howie?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So
You,
I would.
you
Yeah.
were saying that you like to give other people credit and you wanted to make.
Yeah. It's really important to me to give credit where credit is due, because, it's not just about me being a Green and wanting the Green Party to get credit for a policy that it introduced and, championed for years, but I also think it's important because we'll lose our sense of history if we think the Green New Deal just emerged one day in the Democratic Party. Like, that's just complete nonsense. And it sort of drives me nuts where you have activists in the Green Party side that are, going to their state capitals, going to DC, marching on Washington, marching in New York for climate change action, for Green New Deal action. And then all of a sudden the Democrats take it over and say, oh, no, it was our idea. We're not going to credit any Green Party person. And I've looked and I've looked and I've looked, and I have not seen, Congresswoman Cortez give any credit to the Green Party ever. I mean, it's one thing to say, I don't agree with their methods. It's another thing to say, erase us from history. And I think that, this to me, everyone that I work with, I try to make sure that they, erasing someone from history is sort of like the ultimate horrible thing that you could do to a group, a party, or even a person. For example, I worked with Reverend Annie Chambers. She was my running mate in 2018, just last year, for governor. Two Black Panthers. That's a woman. She had 25 children. Black Panther woman, was taught, learned under Malcolm X himself. And, a lot of other, folks don't give her credit. Don't put her in the history books. Never interview her. I mean, I'm just stunned at the self-serving nature of rewriting history to put those who get the limelight one day, like folks in the Democratic Party, and just never mention those folks that they're standing on the shoulders of. Who trained them, who was out there with them in the streets, who protested with them. I mean, it's just not. This is no way to build up the left, in my opinion, and I think it's something that we have to stand against. So, yeah, I mean, I think the resolution for the Green New Deal that's in Congress now is just that. It's a resolution. It's non-binding. It's just a list of things that are nice. I think Speaker Pelosi has clearly said that it's some sort of fictitious dream legislation that she doesn't think is going to go anywhere. And then, you have Congresswoman Cortez saying, oh, no, she meant that positively. It's a dreams are positive. I mean, that's just crazy. You've got to be at war with your own leadership. If we had someone in the Green Party that was saying horrible things, I would denounce them, because the climate change emergency is there. And it's really important that we tackle it right away. I don't care who's in leadership. I'm going to speak out against them because it's important to speak out against someone, or else we're not going to have a planet to live on. So I think that you're seeing that it's about fighting the establishment. It's about fighting the order that got us into this mess. And you're either going to be there to fight and be at war with the folks that are keeping you back, or you're going to, capitulate, give them what they want, and we're not really going to get any real accomplishment on climate change. And scientists give us 11 years left to avoid catastrophic climate change. So I'm going to be out there protesting no matter what, whether I'm running for president or whether I'm just some person out there, getting in front of the, getting on the protest line, marching and chanting in front of ExxonMobil or something like that.
Right. And do you think it's a success for the Green Party that the Green New Deal has been taken up by other parties and it's getting at least media attention?
I do. I really do. This was what's so weird about it. They could have, I think there are a lot of Democratic, progressive Democrats that don't care about the Green Party that could have easily have just said something else. They could have called it like the Democrat Dream Climate Bill or something, ridiculous like that. To go and take the Green New Deal and to put it into the limelight and then just ignore the people that originally came up with it and that have been promoting it for decades or at least 10, 20 years, is just ludicrous. It really speaks to the sort of prevailing insanity in DC right now and in our mainstream media. You had Jill Stein out there talking about the Green New Deal, going on TV, going on the few places that would give her interviews, but she did get mainstream press talking about the Green New Deal and then openly mocking her, just for months when she ran her campaign, years after that. And now all of a sudden the Democrats touch it and they're like, well, maybe we'll give it a second look because the Democrats are touching it. Can we just focus on the science? Can we just get to the science, save our planet, and then we can talk about that kind of stuff later on? Can we just get this stuff done? Seriously, we have to play these ridiculous games about. I don't think this is any way to. When I look at this as one big problem, I think that the mainstream media, sort of ignoring it, and then taking a second look at it and still kind of mocking it is part and parcel of the problem of the Democratic Party, and it's part and parcel of the problem that they don't want to give credit to other political parties. I'm not, I like to keep a vision in mind of what a really functional America would look like. And for me, it's, multi-parties, socialists, even anarchists and libertarians, having a strong, independent party of the two major parties that we have right now. And when you have that many parties out there, 4, 5, 6, that's a real functional democracy. Building coalitions, talking to other folks that don't agree with you, actually getting stuff done. You've got 2 parties right now, run with moderates in them. And you know what they're getting done in DC? Nothing. And even when the Republicans were in charge, only they agreed on is just one tax cut bill. And when the Democrats were in charge, all they agreed on was some slight changes to our corporate medical system, and they called it Obamacare. This is just the way you have a functional, diverse, thriving democracy is through multi-parties that have to get out of their little office, walk down the hall, talk to people that they don't agree with, and come up with real legislation. And these are socialist ideas, anarchist ideas, pro-democratic ideas, Christian socialist ideas. I can go on list and list and list of different groups that are not getting recognition because they're not in the 2 major party system. And until we fix this problem, I think we're going to see we're not really going to make real change at that federal level.
So since you kind of touched on it, are you for the kind of election reform like ranked choice voting and proportional representation?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Yeah, I'm actually 100% for instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting. I'm not a scholar on this issue, so I apologize if I'm getting these terms messed up. And I'm also very for proportional representation as well. I think that's really important. I think that right now, once again, you're seeing, because of the Democrats losing the last presidential election, all these Democratic states are saying, oh, it's time to do away with the electoral college. It's time to do away with the electoral college and go to the popular vote. Okay, well, the popular vote would be better than electoral college, but why don't we actually take a look at other functional and thriving first world democracies, such as those in Europe or even in Canada? You know, I mean, well, Canada doesn't have it, but a lot of European countries have proportional representation. You know, a lot of them have instant runoff voting. Why don't we do a whole commission to actually look at this problem? Why are we just rushing to solve the problem per the one party that lost agenda? I just don't think that's really going to fix the issue at all. And then they'll, you know, one day, 10 years down the road, they'll discover like, oh, proportional representation, the popular vote wasn't the best way to do this. We should probably come up with another system. I mean, I'm not for solving things tiny little incremental bits at a time. I'm for solving things quickly and efficiently and getting to the meat of the problem and making sure that we actually fix the issue. And if you want to fix our democratic institutions, we've got to make sure that that what we now call third parties, independent parties, have full funding as per every other country, pretty much. That you don't have to fight for ballot access every time. That we stay on the ballot for years and years and years. That we have taxpayer money fund our primaries, like the Democrats and Republicans have. I tell people this all the time. People are like, well, not even in the primary. I said, well, do you know that your tax dollars go to the Democrats and Republicans for their primary? Do you know that? And oftentimes, especially if they're independent, they're outraged. They said, I never thought of it like that. But that's exactly what it is. It's it's funding a private club to do their elections. And then we find out with the Bernie election that, you know, Bernie in the primary, they don't even have to run those elections fairly, even though taxpayer dollars are being contributed towards those elections. I mean, I don't exaggerate when I say this. And I was just doing an interview yesterday with the independent outlet, and you know, we do not have a functional democracy. We just don't. We can vote. We can get involved politically. I encourage people to do that, but because of the elites insistent on a two-party state, you know, in 2016, because of a hacking scandal, an email leak, the Democratic Party was, you know, really dealt a devastating blow in that election, in my opinion. So now we have two parties, you know, Democrats and Republicans. What if both of those parties had a devastating issue? You know, the person that won the election was found to be doing something inappropriate, or, you know, there were pictures that came out, or, this very nearly happened in 2016 with some of the stuff they were trying to release on Trump. So is that really choice? You have two parties, you've got, you know, possible scandals ripe in both of them, and you still have to go to the ballot box and choose? I mean, if we had a multi-party system, we could easily, with ranked choice voting, we could easily say, oh, well, you know, sure, you know, here's my safety candidate, number 5. Here's my first choice, number 1. But proportional representation would make that even better, and you make sure the folks, you know, that would normally never get into Congress could easily get into Congress and have their voices heard. So, I mean, I think this is a real trying time for our country. I think we have to look at the authoritarian states, such as China, that we say that we don't want to emulate, and realize, are we going down that path? If the Republicans were in power as a one-party state for a little while, if the Democrats took over and, you know, had that same one-party rule, is that really better? I mean, are we really a functional democracy at that point? Is everyone going to hold hands and be in utopia? I don't think so.
So for the Green Party, election reform is part of the Green New Deal. Is there a difference between, or can you give me your perspective on the difference of the Green Party's Green New Deal and the Green New Deal that's being put out by others right now?
Election reform is barely in the resolution. That resolution is constantly being changed, and drafts are being leaked. I'm not sure if the leaks are intentional or not. So the resolution that's currently in Congress, I don't like to agree with its detractors, but I do think it's more of a wish list. You know, I think even Congresswoman Cortez has said it'll be the first of many steps. So I don't feel like that current form could possibly lead to meaningful legislation. I think what you're going to see happen is this wish list will be voted on. It um, it may, because it's non-binding, so it doesn't really matter if it gets the votes or doesn't. And then from there, you'll probably see an effort to do bit by bit little sections of it. So maybe you'll have a carbon, like a really small carbon tax with no dividend, or maybe you'll have like, money poured into a carbon offset program. And, and every single time one of those tiny little things happen, you'll see progressive Democrats come out and say, yay, this is because of our Green New Deal. Aren't we so great? And in reality, it's like, no, you're not, because your own central document actually says, if you don't do all of these things, we're doomed. So playing with carbon offsets, by your own admission, is not going to save us. But look, I gave a talk in Canada in 2018 to a basic income audience there. And, Canada is actively talking about a basic income. One of their territories actually went ahead and did it. And, it was amazing. A conservative government came in and canceled it. Now they're fighting to get it back. Really interesting stuff. They're way ahead of us. One of the things that one of their progressive leaders openly said, and this guy was a sitting senator in Canada's parliament. One of the things he said was, we have to stop incrementalism. Incrementalism is getting us nowhere, and the challenges that we face are too important to just throw incrementalist policy after policy at it. And I was just, my jaw hit the floor. I said something to him on the panel I was on. I said, I just cannot believe that this is the way that you all talk here in Canada, because even the most progressive and socialist, supposedly socialist folks in the Democratic Party, are saying stuff to the effect of, well, I'm a socialist, but we got to do things little by little, because we're never going to get the votes, we're never going to get the support, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then nothing ever gets done. And then, they go home and say, oh yeah, I'm still a socialist, even though I did absolutely nothing when I was in office to show that. And, people just say, well, better than the Republicans, and they keep voting that way. And nothing ever really changes. So if our world is in crisis, and I would hope that if you're in the Green Party, you agree that our world is in crisis in a number of different fronts, it's time to take ourselves seriously and push that message out. That, incrementalist politics, maybe it would get someone elected, maybe it won't. It doesn't matter. The crises won't care if we get little tiny incremental policies done. The crises need to be fully addressed immediately. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. I want to give people a different vision for what someone running for president could look like, addressing the crises, full stop, day one in office.
Excellent. So what immediate steps would you take to address climate change if you were elected president?
That's a great question. So I think, for us, I do things a little differently than I think you've seen from other declared politicians who are running for this office. One of the things that we're doing is we're trying to state clearly what the president can do immediately upon taking office. So the president is the commander in chief, as you know, and I think people don't realize how powerful that is. The president, he or she, has a unilateral authority over the military with very few restrictions. And in fact, one of the things you see right now is President Trump testing those restrictions when it comes to his supposed border wall. Can that be done under military authority? But military bases, military funding, the military industrial complex, what we do with our troops, how they're treated, what we do with our veterans, how they're treated, all of that falls under the authority of the presidency. Plus, on top of that, this enormous administrative bureaucracy with millions of buildings across the country, massive fleets of cars, massive amounts of personnel. So there are a number of things I think you could do day one in office. And some of the things we're looking at are getting bids to equip every federal building with solar panels or wind. That's day one. Some of the other things we're looking at is letting people who are right now driving to work every single day be able to telecommute. That takes way less, environmental pollution, and also it would keep our roads less congested. We're also looking at things like enlarging the Peace Corps element of our military to allow for an Army, something between a Peace Corps and an Army Corps of Engineer projects in the US. Something akin to the Green New Deal, but rather than go through the legislative process, which is going to take forever, we want to use the power of the military to say, if you join this branch, the Army Peace Corps, we call it, or the Peace Corps local, you will stay in the US, you'll be put to work helping make sure that our bridges, roads, pipes, internet lines, data cables, electrical lines that are all reinforced, that are all functional. I think you all have experienced this out there in California. The wildfires were absolutely terrible. Imagine if we had, a military service dedicated to, not just dedicated to, because we kind of have that already, but guaranteed to be only deployed locally in their area, in their neighborhoods, where they live. They don't have to redo their whole life. They don't have to reset everything. They don't have to manage a big trip abroad and say goodbye to their families. They could actually get stuff done locally. I think you'd have people signing up in droves, and you could pay them a decent living wage. It's something that the military has the authority to decide on its own. And the military budget is so large, you could easily take troops home, shut down military bases abroad, or hand those military bases over to an agency like the UN, which has been proven to be more or less independent versus something like NATO. So I think there's a lot of different things that you could do at a national level. And I just, while we're on the topic too, I also want to just say this because I get a lot of questions about student debt. I think you could address student loan debt through the military as well. You could allow, if you're currently a member of the military, or if you join the military, even through one of these peaceful branches, that you could cancel all their student loan debt, or just have the government buy the student loan debt back from them at the end of the service. I mean, a lot of different countries out there have like 2 years of service, they call it, and you could either join the military or you could do something locally and be part of a civilian corps. And I remember reading about this when I was a kid and thinking that sounds terrible, but because I think there's that instant reaction, like, oh, that sounds like a bad idea. But I do think you could do it on a voluntary basis and make sure people know that, you could just stay home and serve your community locally for 2 years while you figure out your next career plan. Or maybe stay longer, and then you could be one of the lead engineers making sure your own city or town has, decent running water. I mean, we could fix the situation in Flint overnight if we had something like this. And I'm not the first person to say it. I mean, I think Dennis Kucinich talked about a Peace Corps back in the day, but I want to go a step further and make it a local corps focused on actually helping communities that need a really good size investment in their infrastructure, like in Baltimore.
Very interesting. I would love to see our Navy cleaning up the plastic pile that's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
That's a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. That's. I mean, the military admits that's an emergency that they're keeping an eye on. Why aren't they doing something about it rather than just writing papers?
Right.